Perfect conditions for the apple orchard or the pumpkin patch. 72 degrees with sunshine on Saturday, Sunday, right around 74. So again, for the rest of the day today, we're going to have increased potential for some scattered showers and storms moving in from the north. And then tomorrow we are going to have cooler air, feeling finally fall-like. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Caitlin. That's all for Fox 32 News at noon.
And we want to let you know we will be covering that news conference at 1 o'clock with Superintendent Larry Snelling. There might be one at 2 o'clock as well. Busy afternoon. We'll have you covered. Otherwise, we'll see you then and then again at 4.
Next, for a while, guiding you through what's happening live and right now in our area. So just make this 1 to 3 time frame a part of your daily viewing, okay? It is indeed a busy day today as we come off of a weekend that at times has been a little bit chaotic in our area, especially when dealing with immigration enforcement. It's been a major topic throughout the country, but especially right here. Especially when you look at what local, state, and federal municipalities can do, what the federal government can do, a reach of rights, what is and is not appropriate when it comes to different agencies. So who has what jurisdiction, who has what rights, and of course, what comes next? That is the biggie indeed. So for sure, Chicago has been at the center of that discussion nationally. And today, as we come off of this weekend, we're anticipating several different press conferences over the next couple of hours as our elected officials respond to events that are going to be happening today and in the weeks to come, but also over the weekend. We're giving you a live look inside of the Chicago Police Department's press conference that should be starting here any moment now. You can see that the room is full with reporters from several different outlets. Big controversy here in terms of incidents that took place over the weekend. They were federal operations, but CPD kind of got caught up in all of this when it comes to, again, what you can and cannot do. We even had a press conference this morning with the mayor this morning to announce that he was signing an executive order. I want to give you a little bit of information as we await this press conference to begin. The mayor said this morning, and I'm just quoting him here, he said, "Today we are signing an executive order aimed at reining in this administration. The order establishes ICE-free zones. That means that city property and unwilling private businesses will no longer serve as staging grounds for these raids, or school parking lots are not for ICE to load their weapons. They are for Chicagoans who drop their kids off to learn. Our libraries are not the ICE area to prepare for a raid. They're for Chicagoans to read and relax. Our parks are not to set ICE up for checkpoints. They are for Chicagoans to play and enjoy private establishments. They can partner with us to have and make it clear that private properties are private property, and ICE cannot enter establishments without a valid warrant. Private entities may voluntarily choose to display signage to designate the property as a part of a citywide network of community spaces that stand together in affirming the safety, dignity, and belonging of our residents by extending this protection beyond city-owned land. The order now builds a broad civic shield that limits the reach of harmful enforcement practices. It strengthens neighborhood solidarity, and it reaffirms Chicago's role as a welcoming city. The fact is, we cannot allow them to rampage throughout the city with no checks or balances." Again, that is coming from Mayor Johnson. First thing this morning, he had that press conference, and we listened into him and several organizations, local organizations that spoke as well this morning. Obviously, this welcoming city ordinance has come really at the head of this discussion in terms of what municipalities can do, but also how we ended up here with CPD now having a press conference as well. Over the weekend, we saw several different operations that took place that we immediately started to see some protests to. We also started to see some statements from representatives throughout our area to those as well. And so we're just starting to kind of get some reactions today in the form of press conferences. This is just one of the press conferences that we are anticipating over the next couple of hours. The other one at 2 p.m. Governor Pritzker is expected to talk about President Trump's announcement that he's authorizing National Guard troops to be mobilized here. We got several statements about that. Let me just tell you about the statement that we initially got from the federal government, because we did reach out to the White House for a statement on that. And they said, amidst ongoing violent riots and lawlessness that local leaders like Governor Pritzker have refused to step in to quell, President Trump has authorized 300 National Guardsmen to protect federal officers and assets. President Trump will not turn a blind eye to lawlessness. They said that it's plaguing American cities. That came from Abigail Jackson, a White House spokesman, over the weekend. That came down on Saturday. And again, Saturday was a big day for all of these issues here that really have these statements coming out fast and in a hurry. Representative Kelly, and you know, she is running for a higher elected office right now, but she sent out a statement about National Guard troops being mobilized here. It says here that President Trump is bringing war to Chicago. So a lot of very strong language that's being used. She says he's called our city violent and out of control, yet he is the one who has endangered our communities, terrorized immigrants, and wreaked chaos. Just last week, ICE agents burst through an apartment building in my district with flashbang grenades and dragged children, some of them naked, into the streets. This is not the America I know. She's talking about an incident that took place on the south side of Chicago. She says that the man in the White House is playing dictator and abusing his powers while our economy is hemorrhaging money every day during Trump's shutdown. He wants to further waste taxpayer dollars to deploy the National Guard. I refuse to bend the knee, although many of my Republican colleagues have, and I will never give to a man hell-bent on destroying our city. That is, again, coming from Representative Robin Kelly. So you see here, again, that the conversation here in Chicago has really quelled and really caused a national, statewide debate here, as well as things that are local. Going back to this press conference here that we're awaiting with CPD, this is going to be the first time we have heard from Superintendent Snelling in a while, as a lot of these things that we have seen, the operations that we've seen as of late, really go into the purview of federal authorities. But over the weekend, there was a situation with a lot that took place and a lot that's come out of it. So CPD has issued statements in terms of what they did do. They say clarifying some misinformation that was out there. The National FOP, though, that's a Fraternal Order of Police, and the Illinois State Fraternal Order of Police have condemned reports that Chicago police officers were barred, this is from them, from assisting ICE agents. So again, CPD addressing this controversy, the FOP stating that they are condemning what took place over the weekend, saying that CPD was barred from assisting ICE agents. The national president of the Fraternal Order of Police, and also Chris Southwood, who is the president of the Illinois State Fraternal Order of Police Lodge, say that they are shocked and appalled at reports coming out of Chicago that commanding officers were barred, local law enforcement, from assisting in immigration and customs enforcement. That an officer, while he was surrounded by a group of protesters, they say details are emerging, but it appears that officers from CPD were ordered not to assist a group of ICE agents while they were physically threatened by what appeared to be an angry mob. This is their words. They say, let me be clear, both the National FOP and the Illinois FOP believe that when an officer calls for assistance, you answer no matter what. We see Superintendent Snelling making his way into the room and up to the mic. And again, just as soon as he begins to speak, we're going to go ahead and listen in. Let's listen in now.
Calling this press conference to talk about some of the things that's going on in the city. So I want to be clear about one thing. This is about law enforcement response to these types of incidents. So I want to be clear that I'm going to limit my responses to that. So it would be appreciated if your questions are around our law enforcement response to what we're seeing here with federal agents and immigration enforcement and how we respond. I've been quiet a little too long because I want to stay out of the politics of this, because as you know, there's a lot of politics around this. I don't play politics. I've told you that before. I'm the head of a department that enforces the law. We have to be politically neutral if we are going to enforce the law the way that it's supposed to be enforced, impartially. We want to make sure that when we show up, we're keeping every single person in this city safe, and we want to keep the peace. That's our jobs. And that's what our men and women out there every single day are doing, putting their lives on the line to keep this city safe. So I just want to be clear about a few things. The events that occurred on Saturday when there was a shooting involving ICE agents. So I'm going to start with a timeline. It started out with our two deputy chiefs who responded to the scene. That would be Deputy Chief Brian Kinane and Deputy Chief Gabriella Shemash. They did an excellent job over there. The narrative is out there that CPD was not on scene. CPD did not show up. Let me just put all of that to rest. At 10:32 a.m., CPD receives a call of a person shot at 39th and Kedzie. By 10:36 a.m., CPD responds. They located a woman who flagged them down. She had been shot. She stated that she had been shot by federal agents. CFD was called. She was taken to the hospital to have her gunshot wounds treated. At 11:06, CPD officers are at the hospital with this individual who had been shot. At 11:25 a.m., CPD units are holding down the scene where the offending vehicle was located. And when I say the offending vehicle, we're talking about the vehicle that smashed into the Border Patrol vehicle. At 11:36 a.m., the scene is then turned over to federal authorities for their investigation after CPD was clear that there was a shooting that involved this particular person who was at the hospital. At 12:12 p.m., in a separate incident, and I believe people have been conflating these two things. In a separate incident from the shooting, there was a vehicle that rammed the federal agents off the road, ran them off the road at 3200 West 35th Street. They crashed as a result of it. That offending vehicle also struck another vehicle in that location, another federal vehicle in that location, and then fled the scene. Our officers arrived on the scene to do the reports and document everything that happened. We have no documented injuries from that incident. At 12:28 p.m., federal agents called for CPD to assist due to a large crowd gathering at 39th and Kedzie. At 1:09 p.m., additional CPD units are en route to 39th and Kedzie. At 1:15 at 39th and Kedzie, where CPD is on scene, a group of protesters began moving barricades and federal agents deployed tear gas. At 2:56 p.m., objects are being thrown at CPD by members of the public. Federal agents again deployed gas to leave the area. So let me just kind of break down what happened there, because at 3:48, everything was all clear. When our officers arrived on scene, they met with the federal agents who were out there. The federal agents had deployed chemical agents. They deployed chemical agents while our officers were there. Those who will tell you that our officers weren't there, say that to the 27 officers who were affected by the chemical agents that were deployed by federal agents. There were 27 reports done to document our officers who were affected by that gas. I've since had a conversation with federal agents, and on that particular day, I spoke with the leadership of the federal agency. We talked about things as to how we were going to work this out. You see, communication is the key here. Communication does not mean collaboration. This had nothing to do with immigration enforcement. What it had to do with a scene where someone in our city was shot, and we, as CPD, are responsible for showing up, documenting that, even when the shooting and the investigation has been taken over by the FBI. We stayed out there for the crime scene to make sure that evidence was preserved, because if that evidence isn't preserved, a proper and a well-performed investigation cannot be done if we don't preserve the crime scene. If we allow people to breach that area and contaminate the crime scene, it hurts the investigation. We have a duty to do so. So I need to be clear about a few things. When a crime is being committed, CPD is going to show up. And it doesn't matter if there are ICE agents there, we have a duty to investigate and protect our city. Now, there are a lot of talking heads out there. There are a lot of politics being used here. And people are using this for their political talking points. Well, my officers are not political pawns. My leadership team, not political pawns. Their lives are too important to play politics with these men and women who face danger every single day. This is not a game. This is not a joke. This is still our city. And we still have a responsibility to maintain safety and calm in our city. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to address. One, what we have to deal with as a department. Because I want to be clear to those who have never done the job, who haven't done the job in years, who weren't on scene, who don't know the facts or have the facts. But they've got a lot of solutions or a lot of ideas of what happened or what should have happened. Let me first talk about the Trust Act. The Trust Act prohibits law enforcement in the state of Illinois from engaging in assisting federal agents when it comes to immigration enforcement. We abide by that law. The city ordinance, the Welcoming City Ordinance, goes a little further. It even prohibits us from asking someone their status. We abide by that ordinance because in law enforcement, we don't make the laws, we uphold them. And we're sworn to do so. And we take our oath seriously. Engaging with federal agents, we do it on a regular basis. We have task force officers who are out there every single day working to stop human trafficking, drug enforcement, gun violence, gun recoveries, search warrants, and everything in between when it comes to violent crime in our city. We have a great partnership with our federal agents, and we still do, and we will continue to work with them around violent crime. But let me explain how important it is to understand how difficult it is for our officers at times. Because when we look at the Trust Act and the Welcoming City Ordinance, sometimes there's a struggle when you're walking that line to make sure that you're not violating either one of those things. and at the same time enforcing the law the way that we're supposed to. One thing about law enforcement, I'll tell you this right now, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But we accept that. So I'm not going to stand here and make excuses or pretend like the job is not a struggle, so we're going to make excuses about it. No, we're not going to do that. Again, these men and women go out there every single day, and these are the things that they fight through. And my leadership team wants to make sure that our officers don't get caught up in something where they end up in an investigation, fairly or unfairly, and they want to make sure that these officers are safe and that they can keep everyone else safe. So although we do not engage in immigration enforcement, we are going to enforce the law when the laws are violated. So let me be clear to the public about certain things. You have to excuse me, I'm a little dehydrated. Let me make this clear. Federal agents, ICE, HSI, are officers. They are agents of law enforcement. If you box them in with vehicles, it is reasonable for them to believe that they are being ambushed and that this could end in a deadly situation. And it's reasonable for them to use force based on those conditions. Do not box in any law enforcement officer. You are breaking the law when you do that. And you are putting yourself in danger. Following law enforcement agents around. The question is why? What do you plan on doing? It's also reasonable for them to believe that you're eventually going to do harm to them. If you ram any vehicle, especially that one that contains law enforcement agents, and that's any law enforcement, local, state, federal, county, and you do this intentionally, this is considered deadly force. Deadly force is anything that can cause great bodily harm or death. When you plow into a vehicle that contains law enforcement agents, you're using deadly force. And they can use deadly force in response to stop you. We need to be clear about these laws. We cannot become a society where we just decide to take everything in our own hands and start to commit crimes against law enforcement. It is a crime. You may not like what they're doing. I can understand that there's a lot of emotions out there, but that does not mean that you get to commit a crime, especially one that could lead to deadly force. We need to keep everyone safe. Our responsibilities when it comes to federal agents, and I've been asked these questions, we do not interfere with the duties and responsibilities of federal agents. We don't have to agree with it. It doesn't matter. You don't have to agree with it. We do not interfere with their orders. And when they go out to carry out their orders, they will do that the way that they're trained to do it and their understanding of what it is they have to do. Another one. CPD will not arrest and cannot arrest federal agents because someone deems what they're doing is illegal or unlawful. Their rules of engagement are different from CPD and other local law enforcement agents. We need to be clear about this. If we're not clear about this, we will see another event like we saw Saturday. We cannot move like this in this city. If we want to keep the peace in this city, we need to be smart about how we do things. And attacking law enforcement under any circumstances is not safe for anyone. Because as I've said before, a member of law enforcement who cannot protect himself or herself cannot protect anyone else. And we have a responsibility to make sure that we protect ourselves and each other so that we can protect everyone else in this city. If for any reason a crime is being committed, an ICE agent, state, local police officers, if it involves law enforcement, we are going to show up. And whatever's going on there, we're going to work to stop it, put an end to it, calm the situation down. And if we need to stay there to continue to keep the situation calm, we will do exactly that. So I want to be clear about one of the things that we're going to do now. What we're going to do, and this is my decision because I need to be firm on this. When we show up to a scene and a crowd gathers, CPD is going to step out there. We're going to make sure that we maintain that scene and we keep people calm. This is our city, and we're going to make sure that we bring some type of calm or resolution to whatever's going on at that scene. We will be there. Now, when we look at what has happened, there are some things that we can work on. Because whenever you see something for the first time and you respond to it, there's always something that you can do better. That's what we do. And that's why we're having an after action about what happened so that we can prepare if something like this happens again, or to prepare to make sure that we can avoid it. So we learned some things. Now, I'm going to allow some questions from everyone here. I'll do my best to answer your questions to the best of my ability. Again, I would like for everyone to stay on topic as to what we're talking about here right now. And when it's over, there are some things that I'm probably going to touch on if we don't get to them with the questions. So go ahead.
Okay, we'll start here. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Madison with Black Club Chicago.
Okay, this is Anita Blanton here in Studio 32. You have been listening in to Superintendent Snelling there clear up some misinformation about incidents that took place over the weekend. He said he's going to limit his responses to specific incidents because he wants to stay out of politics. But there was a lot of misinformation he wanted to clear up about two separate incidents over the weekend that he believes people are conflating. Let's listen into a bit more of the questions, and then we'll talk on the opposite end of that.
So in order to help out at this location, we pulled officers from other places. They did not have the equipment to fight off a chemical agent, and they were affected by it. Were there any major injuries? No. Our officers are resilient and tough, and they were actually pretty tough on the scene, and but we made sure that it was documented just in case they had some after effects from it. We just want to make sure that our officers are safe. So those officers are doing good, and then thank you for the question, for asking.
Sarah Schulte with ABC7.
Hi,
good afternoon, Superintendent. At any time, maybe you can clear this up too, at any time on Saturday were CPD officers told by dispatchers to stand down?
Well, I don't know about them being told by dispatchers. There was some communication between boots on the ground, a supervisor, and the chief of patrol. So there was some communication by phone. There was something that was put out there that there was an internal message that came from the chief of patrol. That is absolutely not true. There is no internal message. There was a phone conversation. I'm not sure until we get to our after action, all of the exact language that was there. But I have had a conversation with the chief of patrol who was concerned about officers showing up on a scene. The chief of patrol at that time had no information that anyone was in danger. And let me just be clear about one other thing when it comes to these federal agents. These federal agents can handle themselves. All right? We've been out there and we've seen it. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to leave them because we know that they can handle themselves. We need to make sure that we have our officers and enough of them to respond to a scene if they are being surrounded. So were they told to stand down? Our officers were not told to stand down. Our officers were out there throughout the entire event. I would never tell our officers to stand down, because if our officers were in trouble and we needed help from other officers, I would expect those officers to step in and help us. And it's the same thing that we do on our side. When someone is in trouble, we're going to step in. So to get a little more information about that, we'll know by tomorrow what that exact conversation was.
Superintendent, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. JC Navarrete, NBC Chicago. Going off the point here, damned if you do, damned if you don't, as you mentioned. How do you toe that line between showing up and providing backup for a fellow officer who may be in need, but not helping them and execute their orders that are, of course, from a federal level? How do you toe that line between both of those?
You know, doing the right thing, showing up on the scene, doing the right thing, preparing for the backlash, the rumors, the things that people write and say, the things that people accuse you of. Officers deal with this on a regular basis. And this is why wellness for officers is so important, because this is the type of things that an officer has to go home and kind of decompress from, right? You show up to a job, you know you're there to make sure that people are safe. And if there are immigration officers there, they're now being accused of enforcing immigration. They now become the subject of an investigation. They don't know how that investigation is going to unfold. But on my end, it's my responsibility to explain these situations. It's my responsibility to take that off of the backs of my officers, that when they go there and do the right thing, that they can be certain that their superintendent is going to stand up for them for doing what they're supposed to do and doing the job the right way, and that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Hi, Superintendent Saramaki, CBS.
Hi, sir.
This is, I guess, part clarification, part question. I think you mentioned you met the day before on how we're going to work this out. Was that a meeting on Friday with federal partners?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you understood what I was saying.
Yeah, I don't think I did. So I just wanted to clarify. Have you met, I think you mentioned you met the day before to talk about how we were going to work this out. No. So I actually have contact with federal agents. And the reason that I talk to them is because when we have a situation that's volatile, that could blow up, that could turn into a full-blown riot, we have to have this communication. Because if we're going to keep the peace and we're going to keep this city as safe as we can possibly keep it, we need to have that communication. The rules of engagement for federal agents and the rules of engagement for CPD are completely different. There are things that these agents do that we don't do here in the city. So we need to make sure that we have an understanding of how we're going to go about keeping the peace at a scene when a crime has been committed, how we're going to stop violence if that's going to happen. And I had what was a very fruitful conversation that stopped Saturday from ending in a riot-like situation. And we're going to continue to do that. Can you elaborate on what those strategies were then that prevented maybe things getting worse?
I won't go into too much with that, but what I will say is this. Having a conversation about our officers going in, taking over the front line, making sure that we're standing out in front of these protesters so that they can then move to the inner perimeter and do what they needed to do to maintain that crime scene, get that crime scene taken care of as soon as possible, get them out of there as soon as possible. That brings down the boiling point. So if we're working to make sure that we're keeping the peace, this has nothing to do with immigration. It has to do with keeping the peace in our city and keeping calm.
Hi, Superintendent Sophie with the Sun-Times.
Hi,
I don't
Sophie.
know if you could talk a little bit more about, we're going to be involved in scenes like this now. will it look different from how it looked Saturday? Did this federal leadership you spoke with have anything to say about those 27 agents who were, affected by chemical gas?
Oh, absolutely. He was extremely concerned about it. We are going to have further conversations about it. He was also appreciative of the fact that we came in, stepped in, and he was the first to say that this could have turned into a full-blown riot, and it didn't. So CPD, again, just can never say enough about how proud I am of those officers going in, being converged on like that, stepping in, and making sure that they kept the peace there.
Brandon with WBBM News Radio. I think during the DNC, you kind of showed and ushered in what looked like a new era of crowd control and how that might look like successful crowd control. Are you going to be utilizing any of those techniques that were learned and trained for during the DNC? And the second part of this is when you're doing crowd control around these federal agents, will federal agents then be allowed to join in? And would the techniques like we see in Broadview that are being used, or other gas being dispersed throughout the city, are those going to be included into your crowd control techniques? No, because that and let me just go back to your first question, and it's a great one, and thank you for that. Our officers are trained, and we continue that training just in case we have other civil unrest or protests that are going on, First Amendment activity. And our officers are very well trained, as you said. They'll show up on the scene and they'll utilize that training. Depending on the size of the crowd, things of that nature, tactics and techniques could change based on that. However, when they show up, all of the techniques, tactics that they've learned, that's what we'll be utilizing in these situations to diffuse situations and to keep things calm. When it comes to deployments of chemical agents and things of that nature, again, the federal law enforcement, they have a different probably training around it. They have different rules of engagement. So when they deploy based on their tactics and what their rules are. When we take control of a scene, we will have direct contact, communication with them so that they understand that we're going to cover that front line, so that it will be unnecessary to use these chemical agents at this time, because we'll be in front, we'll make sure that we keep these things covered.
Omar Jimenez, CNN, good to see you.
Hey, how's it going?
So in the timeline that you put out, you said 1228 federal agents call for help for a crowd, 109 additional CPD units are en route. I know there were already officers on scene, but can you just give some clarity on what were the considerations, or what would the considerations have been between in the 31 minutes or so, or 41 minutes, quick math, or so, when additional units were still being considered to be sent to the scene? What was the decision making around there, and why was that needed?
Well, the decision making was based on a request. There was a crime scene there that had to be processed by the FBI, who was doing the investigation, and you still had a crowd there, not a very large crowd, but within that crowd there were some unruly people. There were federal agents there, and they held their line, but we wanted to make sure that we got there because there had been some chemical agents that were deployed. We wanted to get there to make sure that we brought the temperature down, allowed for the processing of the crime scene. Once it was processed, then everybody could leave. But that gap of time that you're talking about, it took a little time to move officers from one location to another to get those officers over there. So we pulled officers from other deployments to get over there to help out with what was going on at that location.
Hi, Superintendent Snelling. Tony Hill with the Tribe.
Tony, how are you?
Tonia, but thank you.
Tonia, okay. I'll get that right.
No problem. I wanted to ask, in your comments earlier, you said CPD cannot and will not arrest federal agents, but today the mayor signed an executive order establishing ICE-free zones. So my question for you is, how will the police department, be responsible for enforcing this executive order?
Well, here's what I'll tell you. I've only gotten a chance today to browse over that executive order because it was recently released. That's something that I'm going to have to look at DOL, the Department of Law, sit down and talk about what's in that executive order. So I don't really want to speak on anything that I haven't studied and have a true understanding of. But again, I will go back and say what I said before. We do not arrest federal agents who are here to do their jobs.
Emmy Victor with WGN. Good to see you.
How are you? Good to see you again.
You too. Actually, on that note about the inability of arresting federal agents, I know you all are still responsible for documentation. So I guess my question is, how closely are these situations being documented in terms of the actions of protesters as well as the actions from federal agents? Because as we know, there have already been lawsuits popping up in Broadview, for example, because of the situations, people being pushed to the ground, potential excessive force that people are claiming they've received in that area. So, if there are court cases that stem from this, how closely are you documenting both sides of the situation?
Well, here's what we don't document things on that level. If we make an arrest, if we put hands on someone, if we use force as an agency ourselves, we follow our policies. And this goes back to me saying that the rules of engagement for federal agents going to be different from that of local law enforcement, especially at CPD. A lot of what we do and the way that we respond, our policies are more restrictive than federal and state laws. So when you are looking at what a federal agent is doing, you might be judging that federal agent based on our policies, and you can't do that. Those things have to be separated. So when a federal agent takes someone into custody, the way that they use force, that's going to be for the federal agency to explain, not CPD. So what we worry about and what I worry about are my officers policing constitutionally and keeping each other safe, keeping the city safe, and keeping everyone safe around them, and stopping those who will commit violent acts against anyone. That's what I'm concerned about. So we don't document what they do. That's up to them.
Good afternoon, Superintendent. Caroline with the Chicago Tribune. Nice
Caroline?
to meet you. Yes.
Good to meet you, Caroline.
So the feds called for help at 12:28 p.m. There's a computer message timestamped at 12:28 p.m. that says no units will respond. Dispatchers later captured on audio saying that she's waving off units from 39th and Kedzie. I am wondering what would you call that, if not a stand down, and if there were already enough units on scene, how many were there circa 12:28, 12:30 p.m.?
That's something else that we have to look at, and we have to see because sometimes what you hear on the radio does not necessarily reflect what's happening on the ground once someone's there, but we did have officers over there. We have a timeline and a breakdown of who responded. And if you listen to the radio transmission, there were multiple officers who said they were going to that location. And they showed up because that's what CPD does when they hear that someone's in danger. Now, one of the things that I will say when it comes to that location was separate from the shooting. That was where vehicles were rammed. I believe it was along 31st Street. I believe 3100 West 35th Street. We're still looking into that. This is something that was said over the air, and when I say we're still looking into it, this is part of our after action. I want to be clear about one thing, though, and this will also be a part of the after action. When there is an immediate need for CPD to respond, I don't want anyone, especially when someone's life may be in danger, I don't want anyone to have to call anybody in leadership. I want them to respond. and I want them to respond immediately, because it doesn't matter what an order is. If you know as a law enforcement agent that another law enforcement agent is in trouble, or anyone else, and you need to stop violence against that person, I want them responding, and I want them to respond. Now, you can always explain why you may have disobeyed an order, if that was an order. But I can tell you right now, there is no internal memo that says that. Now, there may have been an understanding of that, but we want to make sure that our officers are responding on the scene. And this is something that we're going to be talking to our officers about. This is something we're going to be talking to our leadership, so that that message trickles down. If there are exigent circumstances, work now and then talk about your response later, because you will respond based on the totality of circumstances that you see at the scene right then and there. And if there are split-second decisions that need to be made, we can always explain those actions for those officers.
Final question.
Afternoon, Superintendent. My name is Peter Nikias. I'm a reporter with Illinois Answers.
How are you, Peter?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. I'm curious if at any point during the afternoon you or anyone in your command staff had a conversation with whoever was in command for the different federal agencies and just said, hey, you don't need to use gas because we know how to do crowd control. A lot of the 9th District, 8th District regulars were there. We saw residents calling them out because they knew them from previous interactions. Did you or anyone in your command staff at any point say, like, hey, it doesn't need to go down like this?
Well, this is why I said that I am right now having conversations with federal leadership when it comes to ICE or immigration, so that we can work that part of it out. And this is why I'm saying now that as CPD, we're going to show up. Yeah. If we're there and we're in control of the crowd and we're handling that, there's no need for the federal agents to be confronted by these protesters or have the protesters confront them.
Yeah,
so.
Just a point of clarification, I'm glad you brought that up. So I understand absolutely when somebody calls for help, you go. That's like the first thing they tell you in police academy, right? Like you call for help, please show up. So one of the things that we heard from residents on Saturday was that they were pleading with the police for help because the use of gas felt disproportionate to what was being offered from protesters. And I understand that there's limited ability to intervene, but I'm just curious, like, why not have that conversation that day of like, hey,
so here's the deal. As I told you before, our officers were deployed all over the city. So to get enough people there so that everyone felt safe, it took time to do that. Now, again, we can have that conversation on the scene, but if that's not how they're trained, that's probably not going to take much effect. That's why communication afterwards has to happen. And I've already reached out to the leadership and expressed concern about that and what we're going to do moving forward, and that's why the communication has to happen. The difficulty here has always been around the belief that CPD is working with immigration enforcement, which we're not. And there's always been that difficulty. But right now, I'm standing here to tell you this. I don't really care about what people think about that anymore, because I know what we're doing. And I'll just explain that so that we can avoid these types of situations happening in the future. Now, I get what you're saying. That's always, when we're looking at a situation like that, we're looking at it in hindsight, right? And things were kind of all over the place. We now know this was the first time something like this happened involving immigration, where someone rammed a federal agent and a shooting occurred as a result of it. Boxed federal agents in, and a shooting occurred. This was the first time this happened. This is why we're doing an after action, so that we can better respond to this the next time something like this happens. So I get you. So hold on. No, hold on. Listen, I just need to address another thing, and this is very important. There's a lot of heat out there around the Chief of Patrol. And I'm going to make this clear. The Chief of Patrol would never tell someone to stand down when any fellow law enforcement agent is in trouble or in need of help. Now, I will say there was a lot of miscommunication, talking points back and forth about what was really happening out there on the ground, and we need to do better. And if we screw something up, we mess up, we fess up, we fix it. But what I will tell you is this. I'm going to tell you about a man with 30 years on this job who has been out there and handled over 400 protests as the Chief of Patrol. A man who stands on the front line with all of his officers. And I know this for a fact because I stand out there with them. The weekend of Mexican independence, he was out there every single day, worked 18 hours every day, out there with his troops. The DNC, the No Kings March, every protest involving the Palestinians, protests over Gaza, protests over immigration. The man is out there. He has worked on the south side, the west side, downtown. The man loves this job, and he loves his officers. And I'm telling you this from the perspective of someone who sits and talks with this man every day. He rarely goes home. He wants to make sure that each and every one of these officers goes home safely. He has the respect of the protests and the protesters and the people who lead these protest groups. He has a relationship with them. He knows how to talk to people. He knows how to deal with people. And the fact that someone could post one thing without any background, with any context, without any information, put lies out there about this man and what he has given to this city, what he has given to this department. I'm just going to stand here and tell you right now, if I were to turn my back on this man because of political BS, and yes, political BS, and people's political beliefs, I would be a coward. That's not going to happen. That's my partner in crime. I will go to war with this man. I'm not going to allow anybody to rake this man over the coals. The DNC could not have been a success without him. Couldn't have been without him. So, you can't be pro-police when you need something, and then anti when it's politically advantageous. You either believe that the job of policing is a tough job or you don't. You either believe in law and order or you don't. We're going to judge a person based on a post. This man has served this city with honor. And I'm going to stand with him till the end. This man's brother was a federal agent who is now deceased. He talks about it. He talks about where he came from. Small town, poor man. We have similar stories. Never thought he'd be the chief of patrol and thankful for it every single day. When I talked to him, he was concerned that our officers who would go there would be exposed to chemical agents without their masks He wanted to make sure that these officers were well prepared if they got there. He wanted to protect his officers. But when we got the information, which I got directly from the head of Border Patrol, that the agents had been involved in the shooting, they had been boxed in, we talked. He immediately redeployed resources to the location to get more people there. See, when you don't know the whole story, it's easy to go online and listen to those who are trolling. I don't really care about that because I know the facts. So I've always said this, and I tell this to my officers. There are two things that you can look at. You can look at your reputation, and you can look at your character. People can determine your reputation. All they have to do is go to social media and tell a lie. Put something up there, post it. But what they can never take away is your character. Because I know the man's character, he knows his character, his family knows his character. Reputation, I never worry about someone's reputation until I have a conversation with them and I get to know their character. People will say your reputation precedes you. It does until you get to know a man or a woman's character. And I'm telling you right now, in law enforcement, with everything that all of us in law enforcement have been through over the years, we cannot turn our backs on each other because of what was posted online. When we do things like that, we're failing each other. How can we talk about anyone else who doesn't support us as police officers if we're not supporting each other? We have to do better. And I'm telling you, Chief Hine is a man of character. And I'm standing here saying this to you, and I don't really care what anybody has to say about it, and I'm going to stand with him. He is my chief of patrol. We will protect this city. We are going to protect all of our law enforcement agents when we're out there. But most of all, we serve the residents of this city. And we are going to protect you. That's what we're here for. That's what he's concerned about, which is why I chose him as chief of patrol. He cares about this city, and he cares about the residents of this city. He cares about law enforcement. And we're going to make sure that we protect everybody in this city and keep calm in this city. This is our city. And the Chicago Police Department is one hell of a department with some amazing people out there working, putting their lives on the line to keep this city safe. And we're going to continue to do so. We're going to show up when absolutely necessary. So I thank you for coming, but look for us out there to do exactly what I said we're going to do, because we've got the best people to get that job done. Thank you.
Okay, we have been listening in there to Superintendent Larry Snelling of Chicago Police. In the end there, getting very passionate, defending his chief of patrol, that is John Hine, who he actually promoted to that position in March of last year. The patrol chief, John Hine, has been with the department for nearly 30 years. But of course, there is this great controversy now, largely online, with posts about the patrol chief, John Hine, regarding whether there was or was not a stand down order on Saturday. The superintendent making it very clear there were two separate incidents that took place on Saturday on the southwest side of the city, one at 35th, another one at 39th, that people he believes are conflating into one incident. That one at 39th in particular has garnered a great deal of controversy, because because this is where a woman was shot after officers were rammed and boxed in by about 10 cars on Chicago's southwest side there in that area. 2 suspects have now been charged in connection with that particular incident. But after it took place there, even the Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security, Tricia McLaughlin, posted on X on Saturday saying, accusing Chicago police officers of leaving the shooting scene. And she said that the department refused to assist in securing the area. So that is coming from the Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security. Now, Superintendent Snelling saying there that his officers met with federal agents when they got there, so he's saying they were there. In fact, he says to those who say CPD wasn't there, he says tell that to the 27 officers affected by chemical agents that were dispersed in that area, because after the shooting, there was a large scene in terms of people coming out to protest what had taken place there. So he says there was some communication, and he says don't call that or that the communication doesn't mean that there was collaboration between CPD and the federal agents, but there was some type of communication there. He said that he's even spoken with the head of Border Patrol since that incident took place. He says his officers and leadership are not political pawns and that they have a duty to maintain safety and calm in our city. So he said that they were at both scenes. Now, he also went on to mention 2 things that I think we'll talk a lot about in the coming weeks, and especially today. One is the Trust Act, and that prohibits law enforcement from assisting federal agents when it comes to immigration enforcement. And the other is the Welcoming City Ordinance, okay? He says that they do walk a fine line not to violate those 2 things, but he says they don't make the laws, they're sworn to enforce them. Giving notice also to residents as well about behaviors that can warrant reasonable force, even deadly force, going back to that shooting scene again where officers were rammed and boxed in by about 10 cars in that area. He says his decision moving forward, well, that CPD will be more present at scenes. He says he's working on an after-action report right now to see what they can do better. But he was very strong when saying that officers were not told to stand down. He admitted there was some type of communication that has caused this controversy, saying that the chief of patrol, though, would never tell officers to stand down, especially when other agents are in need of assistance. He said to people who are posting online, specifically about this chief of patrol, John Hine, you cannot be pro-police when you need something and then anti-police when it's politically advantageous. Also, there was a question that was asked by one of the reporters about now trying to police the anti-ICE free zones, okay? He's talked about the need to study over the new ICE free zones and the executive order that was just signed this morning by the mayor. Obviously, that brings about a whole new type of issue there for, again, going back into the Trust Act and the Welcoming City Ordinance that they will have to look over and speak with attorneys about. So much more to come through that. He says that he expects to look over that ordinance today, and hopefully they'll have more information too about that miscommunication from over the weekend by tomorrow. So we will continue to ask more questions about that. And of course, we are still awaiting the press conference, the next press conference today that should be about 2 p.m. when it is 2:02 right now. So maybe any minute now, with Governor Pritzker, that's expected to talk about President Trump's announcement that he is authorizing the National Guard, troops coming from Texas, maybe as many as 300 to 400 of them to be mobilized here in the state of Illinois. So it is a big day. There are a lot of major issues that we are expecting. And again, another press conference that we should hear from any moment. But I do want to go ahead and move on to our next topic and see how much of this conversation we can have. Obviously, throughout the year, one other major issue has been the tariffs, right? Are they going to happen? Are they not? What do businesses do? How can they go about, not passing along that money to their customers? And one local business had a lawsuit that's now gone all the way up to the Supreme Court. And so I want to bring in Elena Ruffman, the Vice President of Marketing and Product Development at Hand to Mind in Vernon Hills. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us today. And I apologize in advance if we need to break our conversation to get to the next press conference.
No worries. I get it.
Okay, tell us a little bit about your business for those who haven't seen the earlier reports that we had about what you all do.
Yeah, sure. So we are a family business. I'm fourth generation in our family business, over 100 years, and we're located in Vernon Hills, Illinois. And our mission is we bring learning to life. So we create educational toys and educational products that are used in homes and in schools in over 100 countries.
So tell me then, what has changed in this past year to bring us to this point?
Yeah, sure. So the reciprocal tariff policy that started to come out, really April was kind of the heat of it, just became incredibly disruptive for our business. So when the tariffs went to 145% on China, it effectively became a ban on our products. Because we create very specialized products that tend to be used for children who have learning disabilities or need special help in school, we have very low production runs. And so it's really not feasible for us to make them in the United States. They're too low volume. And so we do most of our manufacturing overseas. But when the tariff rates became so high, it effectively prices out our products. So they become price points where nobody can afford to pay for them, which is why we said it was an effective ban. So when that happened, we started to kind of look into options and ultimately decided to bring a lawsuit to stand up for, the 500 employees who work for us. We feel very strongly that we have a mission that we fulfill, and we want to be there for the families and schools that depend on us.
And I'm sure those employees certainly appreciate your efforts. You all have been in business for about 40 years, so clearly you're treating your employees with some respect here. But I ask you this, what is the likelihood or what would it take for you all to move your operations to the U.S.? Because it does seem like that's a part of the wish or a part of the hope in President Trump's orders in advancing these tariffs. What is the possibility of you all moving your operations to the U.S.? And is the issue more so with that or with just the uncertainty of the moment?
Yeah, sure. So we actually do some manufacturing in the U.S., but we manufacture thousands of products. So when you're a school supplier, you have to make products for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third. You can't skip second grade because they don't buy as many products. You need to make the stuff for everybody. So it creates a very wide portfolio, and it's just not reasonable for us to make every product in the U.S., meaning we can't find suppliers who want to make our products. They're too low volume, they're too specialized. So we might make them a couple thousand at a time versus manufacturers in the U.S. want to make 100,000 or 1 million units at a time. And that's just not realistic when you're talking about these specialized products that are used in a grade level in a school.
Yeah, and the last time that we caught up with you, you were getting ready to meet with several of your partners, I believe in India. Mm-hmm. What was the outcome of those meetings? I'm getting in your business a little bit here, but what was the outcome of those meetings? And as much as you can, what were those conversations like? I'm looking for, what did you discuss with them, and how do your international partners view what's going on?
Sure. So we manufacture in several different countries, India being one of them, and we've been looking to expand our network in India. So I went to India in June, and I met with a mix of existing suppliers and some new suppliers, and really what we were talking about with them was capabilities. Could they take on our products? What kind of specializations do they have? Would they meet our safety and quality standards? And so really just trying to vet them out and see in person what their operations look like. The tariff rates on India now have gotten much higher, so that's been an extra challenge to our incentive to push more manufacturing there.
Mm-hmm. So how are your legal proceedings proceeding here? How did we go from the start to now Supreme Court? Walk me through that.
Yeah, sure. So our lawsuit was originally filed in the District Court of DC. So we had a hearing in May and then got a decision in early June that agreed with us that the IEEPA tariffs are illegal. The government appealed that right away. We actually never got to the appellate level because the Supreme Court kind of plucked our case ahead of that. So our case is being combined with two other cases, the VOS selections case and then the 12 states case that's led by Oregon. And all those are going to be heard together at the Supreme Court on November 5th.
Okay, I just want to ask you a couple more questions here before we have to go to, again, the press conference and the proceedings for that. But one, have you ever questioned whether to proceed with this? And then what happens if they rule in your favor? What happens if they rule against you? Do you have a plan as to what's next?
Sure. We never really questioned whether we should bring the lawsuit or not, because we have a responsibility to pay people's paychecks. And this was an existential threat to our business. And not only that, but, we have a lot of schools and families who depend on us for specialized products. And we have a responsibility to make sure that we can be there for them and we can deliver the products that they need when they need them. And so, those kind of factors made it clear to us that this was something that we had to do because we want to protect our business. That's what our job is to make sure that we can withstand, another 100 years. And so we want to do that. As far as what happens with the Supreme Court, it's hard to say because nobody knows that except for the justices. We expect that, however they rule, they'll kind of issue some guidance as to what resolution will look like. And that may happen at the Supreme Court level, or they may kick it down to a lower court to figure that out.
Well, we are certainly interested in any updates that you get in. We'll be paying very close attention to it. Everyone, again, this is Elena Ruffman, the Vice President of Marketing and Product Development at Hand to Mind. Local business, Vernon Hills, that's now had a case that's made it up to the Supreme Court dealing with tariffs. Please keep us up to date.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Really appreciate your time. All right, everyone, like we said, we are awaiting another press conference. This is a big one with Governor Pritzker and I'm sure several other elected officials who will be talking about the possible deployment of National Guard troops from Texas here to the state of Illinois. Let's listen in to Paris Schutz, our political reporter, who is giving a breakdown of things to expect right now with our own Sylvia Perez.
Right,
Tennessee.
Tennessee.
And as we look at what's been going on over the last month, the biggest concern from our city leaders is that we were going to have ICE agents come in first, that there would be protests, and that those protests might result in violence, which would then warrant calling in the National Guard. Right.
Yeah. Well, that was the prediction made by Governor Pritzker, and I have to say that's what's
and the mayor.
That is what seems to be happening here. As you send in these federal agents, and it inflames tensions. There's certainly protesters that are very against what they're doing. But when you look at the way and the tactics used by federal agents, the way they've advertised, the way they've made videos, very slickly produced movies and videos and photo shoots about rappelling from the Black Hawk helicopter into that apartment in South Shore, you can look at that and say, kind of stirring the pot. I mean, look, lots of people were deported under the administration of Obama, but you didn't generally see this level of chaos because they didn't do it with this kind of panache, with this kind of flair, where you have the commander Bovino from Customs and Border Patrol doing videos, doing photo shoots, and you look at that and you can't say that the purpose here is to bring down tensions if you are the messaging and the PR part of this and the content part of this is big. You're announcing your presence, you're inflaming tensions, and now this is what's following, and it looks like the governor is ready
about
to speak
talk.
now.
So let's listen into this now.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Earlier today, the state of Illinois filed a lawsuit challenging Donald Trump's unlawful and unwarranted plans to deploy armed military troops to Chicago. There is no invasion here. There is no insurrection here. And local and state law enforcement are on the job and managing what they need to. Without my permission and against my vigorous objections, the president has federalized 300 Illinois National Guard military troops and hundreds of National Guard members from Texas, and he has ordered them to activate for duty in Illinois. I have called upon Governor Abbott to immediately withdraw his support for this decision and refuse to allow Texas National Guard members to be used in this way. Let me be clear. Donald Trump is using our service members as political props and as pawns in his illegal effort to militarize our nation's cities. I want to thank Attorney General Kwame Raoul and his staff, along with my General Counsel Ann Spillane and our excellent Governor's Office legal team, for working tirelessly for weeks now to prepare federal lawsuits in anticipation of this unconstitutional invasion of Illinois by the federal government. For weeks now, Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, and Gregory Bovino have brought their militarized CBP and ICE agents to the streets of Chicago to cause violence and chaos in this city. They need to stop inciting our city's residents. Since the beginning of this invasion, families have been snatched up off the streets or removed from their homes, zip-tied and detained for hours, including especially U.S. citizens and legal residents of our state. And in the words of CBP Chief Patrol Agent Greg Bovino, they're being chosen by how they look. Peaceful protesters have been hit with tear gas and shot with rubber bullets. Journalists simply reporting the facts on the ground have been targeted and arrested. U.S. citizens, including children, have been traumatized and detained. This escalation of violence is targeted and intentional and premeditated. The Trump administration is following a playbook: cause chaos, create fear and confusion, make it seem like peaceful protesters are a mob by firing gas pellets and tear gas canisters at them. Why? To create the pretext for invoking the Insurrection Act so that he can send military troops to our city. He wants to justify and normalize the presence of armed soldiers under his direct command. I want to take you through the steps that he's taken to follow the playbook and show how it is playing out real time here in Illinois. When I first heard reports of Trump's plan to send armed military troops into our streets, more than 100 elected officials, business leaders, clergy, law enforcement, educators, and community organizations gathered on August 25th to send an unequivocal message to Donald Trump. We don't want troops on the streets of Chicago. There was never an insurrection or an invasion on the ground that justified the deployment of the military to our American city. We stood out there on a beautiful day at River Point Park to make that point. Donald Trump's deranged depiction of Chicago as a hellhole, a war zone, and the worst and most dangerous city in the world was just complete BS. He clearly has decided to declare war on a great American city that has the lowest homicide rate in 60 years, in a state that has record employment and near record tourism. And he's done it for some unspoken reason. I spent the days and weeks following that out and about in our communities, in Bronzeville, in Austin, in Little Village, Berwyn, South Shore, and others, walking and talking and listening to real Chicagoans and local business owners, something Donald Trump, Greg Bovino, Tom Homan, and Kristi Noem have never bothered to do. No insurrections, no invasions. The folks in the neighborhoods do not want armed troops marching in their streets. When it comes to public safety, they want civilian law enforcement when they need them, and jobs, and after-school programs for kids in the neighborhoods. They do not want Donald Trump to occupy their communities. Then the Trump invasion began. Since ICE and CBP announced their operations on September 8th, our people have been subjected to violence, intimidation, and harassment. They have struck fear in our communities, including notably fear in the hearts of U.S. citizens. Trump and the thuggery that his agents have brought has actively made us less safe. Less than a week later, on September 12th, ICE shot and killed a man in Franklin Park, a nearby suburb of Chicago. His name was Silverio Villegas Gonzalez. Reports say that he had just dropped his kids off at daycare and was headed to work. Shortly after that incident, ICE issued a statement justifying the killing, saying that the federal agent was seriously injured, sustained multiple injuries, and was dragged a significant distance. Immediately, we were left with more questions than answers. And frankly, the story just didn't add up. I demanded a full accounting into the facts of the situation. The community was rightfully distraught. Even Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum demanded answers. The facts are coming out, and they are raising even more questions. The Chicago Sun-Times obtained body camera footage from Franklin Park PD. The agent said on camera his injuries were nothing major and that he was dragged a little bit. As a reminder, DHS said that the agent was seriously injured, sustained multiple injuries, and was dragged a significant distance. His children, Silverio's children, have now been left without a father, and they and the public deserve to know the truth. There's been zero accountability or transparency from ICE or the administration. Last week, federal agents dressed in camouflage gear conducted a military-style raid on an apartment building in South Shore, a neighborhood of Chicago. They brought Black Hawk military helicopters and more than 100 agents in full tactical gear. Even though it was supposedly a very dangerous and important mission, they brought dozens of cameras and set them up so that they could film their attack on the building in HD for social media. See for yourself. So even though they documented the raid, their propaganda video conveniently left out important facts. In the dead of night, and seemingly for the cameras, armed federal agents emerged from the Black Hawk helicopters, rappelling onto the roof of that apartment building. According to media reports, the agents ransacked multiple apartments and detained almost everyone in the building, including U.S. citizens and children who had done nothing wrong. Witnesses told reporters that federal officers zip-tied the hands of people, including children and seniors. Some, including U.S. citizens, were detained in the back of vans for hours. Seemingly proud of this shameful treatment of innocent people, they recorded it, and Kristi Noem posted the video, bragging about the operation. Since we sat through that propaganda, I think it's important to hear directly from members of the community who experienced this takeover of the building.
Neighbors like Ebony Watson says they ducked for cover as they heard several flashbangs go off.
They was terrified. The kids was crying, people was screaming. They looked very distraught. I was out there crying when I seen the little girl come around the corner. Because they was bringing the kids out too. Had them zip tied to each other. That's all I kept asking. Where's the morality? Where's the human? One of them literally laughed. He was standing right here. He said, them kids.
Watson says budget trucks and military-style vans were used to separate parents from their children. Other neighbors say.
All right, let's move on. No one can hear it, although ABC 7 gets credit.
They had a big 15-inch chainsaw with a round blade on it, cutting this fence down. We're under siege. We're being invaded by our own military.
The FBI did confirm this morning that they did help the U.S. Border Patrol carry out a targeted immigration enforcement operation in this area, and they say they have been supporting these efforts at the direction of the U.S. Attorney General.
Imagine being a child awakened in the middle of the night by a Black Hawk helicopter landing on your roof. Imagine an armed stranger entering your home and forcibly removing you from your bed, zip-tying your hands, separating you from your family, and detaining you in a dark van for hours. This didn't happen in some faraway authoritarian regime. It happened right here in Chicago, right here in the United States of America. The reports of excessive use of force against children is unconscionable. And the way many innocent residents who lived in the building were treated is appalling. In response, I've directed the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services and the Illinois Department of Human Services to provide support and to evaluate the treatment of the children who were traumatized. If they find suspected abuse or neglect by federal agents, the state will be taking every possible action to hold those individuals accountable. Now, I'd like to turn to some examples of the more egregious actions that we've seen from ICE, CBP, and the other federal agents. Over the past several weeks, it has been made abundantly clear that Trump's invasion force is not going after the worst of the worst, like he said. They're harassing and detaining many people based only on the color of their skin. Tamale vendors, delivery people, people looking for work at Home Depot, and even families just out and about enjoying themselves on a sunny day. Dasha Ramirez, an 8-year-old girl, and her family were detained by federal agents while enjoying a day in Millennium Park. Witnesses saw her crying and clutching her doll. Honestly, what danger did they represent? What is it that they presented that was so awful? And how did detaining them make anyone safer? Federal agents have been openly carrying assault rifles downtown, racially profiling people, and based on that, demanding proof of citizenship, and snatching people up in our neighborhoods without a judicial warrant. All of it rightfully has Illinoisans very upset. In the small suburban village of Broadview, with a population of 8,000, federal agents have turned 2 blocks of protest areas into a war zone by firing chemical agents and tear gas at peaceful protesters. They've used rubber bullets and flashbangs. Agents reportedly unholstered their guns and pointed them at peaceful protesters. They arrested a journalist who was a bystander, and they fired a chemical weapon at a CBS reporter in her car. They even detained Juan Munoz, an Oak Park trustee, and they're detaining people for extended periods in a facility not designed for that purpose. After seeing this, I could not, in good faith, allow federal agents to continue inciting people who were there to express their First Amendment rights. At the request of the Broadview Police Department and with the help of the Cook County Sheriff's Office, we sent backup to ensure people could safely express their rights while also protecting nearby Broadview residents who have had ICE and CBP operating in their neighborhoods in an aggressive fashion and interfering with their daily lives. As someone who has myself peacefully protested since I was a kid, I understand the sentiments on the ground from some of the advocates, but I want to say this: peaceful protesters are welcome. Federal agents who abuse their position to terrorize Illinoisans and incite violence are not welcome. They aren't receiving any orders from Trump to cease and desist their aggressive behavior. Remember, they answer only to Trump, not to the people of Illinois. In case there's any doubt about that, Noem, Bovino, and their agents have been escalating the situation outside the ICE facility and inhibiting the Broadview police from doing their jobs. At one point, state police asked CBP leaders for time to move the crowd to avoid any unnecessary confrontations. Rather than give state police time to protect the protesters and the ICE agents, Kristi Noem chose to drive her motorcade through the protesters to create clashes. Shortly after, Bovino came out to threaten mass arrests. These stories are only scratching the surface. While all of this happened, we got reports that tear gas was unnecessarily thrown by agents at people on a busy street in Logan Square, right near an elementary school and a grocery store. A Chicago alderman at a hospital asked masked officers some questions about someone that they detained, and she was arrested for it.
Learn your laws.
He has constitutional rights.
No.
He has constitutional rights. Do you have a sign?
No, you need to leave.
For me?
Turn around. You're impeding. Turn around and leave.
He is under.
I'm going to arrest you if you do
arrest.
not leave.
You are going to be placed under arrest. Turn around.
Do you have a signed judicial warrant for him?
Can somebody go in the hallway and get Lisa for me, please?
Judicial warrant for him.
Can somebody go in the hallway and get Lisa for me? This is an older person who's being under arrest. I need my other staffer who's in the hallway by registration to come here, please.
You are hurting. I am asking. I am not.
Can somebody get my staffer, please?
This is a hospital. Do you have a signed judicial warrant for him? I am asking. I am asking. I did not touch you.
I told you to leave.
I did not
You're
touch
impeding.
you.
Now you're
I
under
did
arrest
not
for
touch you.
impeding.
I did not touch you. I asked you if you had a signed judicial warrant for him. It is very simple. It is very simple. That man has constitutional rights. I did not touch you. It is a public space. I am not trespassing. I am asking you. Do you have a signed judicial warrant? I am asking. Do you have a signed judicial warrant for him? It is a question, sir. You are an agent. You are a federal agent.
We do not need a
You are a
warrant for
federal
somebody
agent. I
under
am an
arrest.
elected official, and I'm asking. Do you have
What
a
elected
signed
official?
judicial warrant? I'm the alderman of this
Can you
ward.
keep recording? I need a call.
If arresting an elected official for peacefully asking questions isn't a demonstration of authoritarianism, then what is? I refuse to let Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, and Gregory Bovino continue on this march toward autocracy. Their plan all along has been to cause chaos, and then they can use that chaos to consolidate Donald Trump's power. They think they can fool us all into thinking that the way to get out of this crisis that they created is to give them free rein. Well, that plan will only work if we let it. The state of Illinois is going to use every lever at our disposal to resist this power grab and get Noem's thugs the hell out of Chicago. I'm not afraid. I am not afraid, and I won't back down. Now, before I turn the podium over, the court here has given U.S. Department of Justice 2 days to respond in writing to the state's TRO motion. They have to respond by midnight Wednesday night, and the next hearing will be on Thursday. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to our terrific Attorney General, Kwame Raoul.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As we all know, the President has for some time been threatening to deploy the National Guard into Chicago and into the state of Illinois. And that's significant. And he's been threatening to militarize our streets, and in many ways has done so. This morning, I filed a lawsuit challenging the unlawful deployment of the National Guard troops to Illinois, including the Illinois National Guard, the call for the Texas National Guard, And my lawyers have just, as the governor updated you, were just in court arguing these actions. We're seeking a temporary restraining order, and we'll hear from the government from the federal government within a couple of days. The American people, regardless of where they reside, should not live under the threat of occupation by the United States military, particularly for the reason that their city or state leadership has fallen out of the president's political favor. I said we would be prepared to respond to any unlawful deployment, and that moment has come, and we have responded. In the more than 40 lawsuits we have filed challenging the Trump administration's unlawful actions, we've explained that the executive branch has to follow the law. A president cannot go beyond the authority granted by Congress with regards to deploying the National Guard. The militia clauses of the United States Constitution give Congress sole authority to decide what factual circumstances allow the president to federalize the National Guard. The Posse Comitatus Act prohibits members of the military from engaging in civilian law enforcement. Just last month, a judge in California recognized that fact. Our local law enforcement have shown time and time again that they are effective at maintaining peace throughout Illinois. And the 10th Amendment preserves the state's sovereignty and right to do so. And there is no need or justification for a militarized response to anything going on in Chicago. It is unfair to National Guardsmen. It is unfair to local law enforcement. And it is certainly unfair to the law-abiding citizens of Illinois who do not want to be subject to military occupation. The only situations that are out of control are certain ICE and Customs Border Patrol officers who are engaged in shocking overreach in an attempt to create a crisis. In fact, President Trump's own statements over time demonstrate that this is not at all about an emergency. He said specifically that he wants to use American cities as military training grounds. He has threatened using a meme, Chicago about to find out why it's called the Department of War. He has disparaged and threatened to deploy in Chicago for weeks. This is not about an emergency. This is a political targeting, utilizing our military. This is not about the federal government being unable to do their job through normal channels. This is about a president's unconstitutional desire to take the unprecedented action of militarizing American cities. But just this weekend, a judge in Oregon issued a temporary restraining order stopping the administration's similar actions in Oregon. As the judge said in the ruling, this is a nation of constitutional law, not martial law. Donald Trump's derogatory comments about the city of Chicago started even before he took office. Without any official communication with the state, Operation Midway Blitz began bringing federal immigration teams in unconstitutional detentions and raids that have caused mass panic and protest and injuries. And the shooting of a Franklin Park resident and father during an attempted warrantless vehicle stop by federal agents. Throughout the month of September, it is federal agents who have escalated tactics, with the head of the Customs and Border Patrol operations in Chicago threatening that ICE would bring a shit show to Broadview, which is what they have created. It was not until September 26 that a memo from DHS was sent to the Department of Defense requesting 100 troops to be sent to protect ICE facilities in Illinois, presumably in reference to Broadview. That memo was emailed to a member of the Illinois National Guard on September 29, requesting troops to integrate with federal law enforcement operations. The state received no further communication until the morning of October 4th, a Saturday. At that time, Adjutant General Rodney Boyd received a call from the U.S. military asking him to start the process of calling up 300 members of the Illinois National Guard. It was followed by a memo stating that the President has directed the mobilization of at least 300 members of the Illinois National Guard to protect the federal personnel, functions, and property in Illinois, with no further specifics. The memo explicitly stated that if the state did not agree to the request within 2 hours, the Secretary of the Department of Defense would federalize and deploy as many National Guard troops as he wants. Because there is no public safety need or other emergency requiring the National Guard intervention, Illinois again declined to voluntarily call up troops that we don't need or want. Saturday night, General Boyd received a memo purporting to call the Illinois National Guard into federal service under Section 12406 of the U.S. Code, even over the objection of the governor. The stated reason for the order is to protect ICE and other U.S. government personnel and federal property. They provided no information about threat assessments or planned operations that were referenced in the memo. I'm here to say that the President's actions are illegal. The President has failed to establish that any of the legal prerequisites exist for his efforts to mobilize the National Guard's troops here. No president can flout the Constitution. I said we will not hesitate to fight any unlawful deployment, and I want to make sure to make clear that our prayer for relief includes barring the threatened deployment of the National Guard from the state of Texas or anywhere else. Last night, we became aware of an undated memo from Secretary Hexas to Adjutant General of Texas, federalizing the Texas National Guard for service in Illinois, Oregon, and other locations. Deployment of the military to Illinois is unlawful and unconstitutional, no matter where these forces come from. I want to lift up the hardworking lawyers in the Attorney General's office who worked at all times of the night and the wee morning. We were communicating at ungodly hours to put together this complaint. As we speak, the team is just coming from arguing for a temporary restraining order. These same lawyers and others on my staff, as well as on the governor's staff and the city corporation council staff, toiled over the past year responding to numerous threats, and our lawyers have, as you know, filed over 40 lawsuits. These lawyers are the true American heroes. Collectively, we will continue to fight on behalf of the citizens of Illinois and the American people at large. With that, I'd like to pass it on to our mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Thank you to the governor. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'm grateful for all of the elected leaders that are here, our congressional delegation, as well as our Cook County Board President, which you'll hear from shortly. Today, I stand with all of our elected officials and community leaders in denouncing President Trump's declared war on Chicago and Illinois. I'm proud The city of Chicago is joining the state of Illinois in our lawsuit against the Trump administration's unlawful deployment of the National Guard in our city and in our state. I've promised that the city of Chicago will do everything in our power to protect the constitutional rights of all Chicagoans. This lawsuit is the latest demonstration of our commitment. Let me be absolutely clear. The president is not sending military troops to Chicago to keep us safe. We know this because Trump has a history of targeting Chicago. He issued a series of executive orders attempting to defund so-called sanctuary jurisdictions and sue the city over our welcoming city ordinance. A federal judge recently dismissed that lawsuit, and the courts have prevented the Trump administration from restricting the city's funding based on our local laws. Now that the president has lost those cases, he is changing tactics to send in the Guard. He has stated his intentions outright to use our neighborhoods as training grounds for our military. He told them that they are, and they must be, prioritized in order to, in his words, defending the homeland against the invasion from within in American cities run by, quote, radical left Democrats, specifically including the city of Chicago. The only radical is a president trying to deploy National Guard from across the country into our city. We do not need or want the National Guard to police our streets. We want to continue our holistic strategies and partnerships that have led to the safest summer in the city of Chicago in 60 years. Not only will a National Guard deployment make our communities less safe, but it will also have a chilling effect on economic activity in Chicago, as we have seen in other jurisdictions where the president deployed the Guard. And furthermore, deployment of the National Guard will impose costs on CPD and other city departments who will have to respond to protest activity and any issues that may arise from the deployment. This is wrong, full stop. With today's litigation, we send a message to the president. Chicago will not be used as a political prop. Chicago will not be intimidated, and we will not be silent. And to our residents, know that we are fighting for you and using every legal avenue to protect your rights, dignity, and your humanity. And lastly, I want to be clear. When we talk about protecting our democracy, we are not just speaking about the right to vote every couple of years. We are speaking about something much deeper and much more profound. We go back to the labor leader, A. Philip Randolph's definition of democracy, and he said, a community is democratic only when the humblest and weakest person can enjoy the highest civil, economic, and social rights that the biggest and most powerful possess. And that means that whether you are a billionaire or a thousandaire or a hundredaire, you deserve the exact same rights. The Constitution applies to all of our residents. This president wants to remake a country by the ultra-rich and for the ultra-rich, and he wants to use the military and his private militarized force to repress the rights of poor and working people. We prefer a government that is of, by, and for the people. And that's what we are fighting to protect. And thank you again to the governor, the attorney general, and to our congressional delegation and our county leaders, and to all of our partners that have demonstrated a great deal of unity and courage and persistence in this moment. Our city has faced tough times before, and every time we stood strong because we stood together. Let's continue to work together to protect our democracy and to fight for the future of our country. And with that, please welcome to the podium Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm grateful to be here with the governor, with the attorney general, with the mayor, and members of our congressional delegation. Jesus Garcia, Jan Schakowsky, Mike Quigley, Raja Krishnamurthy, Brad Schneider, Robin Kelly, and Danny Davis. Thank you all. For generations, our neighborhoods have been built and rebuilt by working people who stand together in hard times. We're not strangers to struggle, and we're also not people who will be intimidated The Trump administration's authorization of National Guard troops to enter Cook County and Chicago is a dangerous and reckless abuse of power. It's an affront to local governance, a violation of trust, and an insult to residents and local law enforcement officers who are working every day to make this city safer and more just. Slamming human beings to the ground, dragging them in the street. This is not immigration enforcement. It's intimidation. It's fear tactics. It's an illegal abuse of power dressed up as law and order. The truth is that our local leaders, our local police, our community organizations, and our residents have been working for years to reimagine what safety means. It's about building trust, investing in prevention, and healing the wounds that have festered far too long. We're working to replace fear with fairness. And this administration would rather send troops than send real help. We know what this looks like. Deploying the National Guard to Chicago sends a chilling message. It tells us that standing up to the Trump administration is something to be crushed, not heard. That local voices do not matter. The federal government decides to flex its power. This is not democracy. It's authoritarianism, plain and simple. I stand with Governor Pritzker, Attorney General Raoul, Mayor Johnson, and every local leader who rejects this federal overreach. Cook County will continue to stand firm in defense of our residents and our democratic values. Cook County will be filing an amicus brief in full support of the state of Illinois' lawsuit to block the Trump administration from deploying federalized National Guard troops in our communities. The federal government has been extremely clear that they're taking this action not to assist Illinois and local officials, but to use Chicago as a training ground for the military to fight what they dub the war from within. This is direct punishment of state and local governments' exercise of their sovereign right to enact constitutional laws and ordinances. We believe in accountability. We believe in community solutions. And we believe that local problems are best solved by local people. We are a proud, diverse, and resilient county. We fought for decades to build a government rooted in equity and inclusion. And we will not allow our efforts to be undermined by a federal government that chooses confrontation over collaboration. And now I'd like to bring to the podium Congressperson Jesus Garcia.
Thank you to all the leaders of Illinois and Chicagoland, Cook County, that are assembled here, demonstrating once again that Chicago and Illinois are places with strong shoulders, and that we will shoulder any injustice and we will tackle any injustice that comes our way as we live this very dangerous moment in our history. The President of the United States has turned the power of government against its own people. In my community, ground zero for these attacks, ICE has created a constant state of siege. People worry about their presence and their tactics every single hour of the day and night. We've seen masked ICE agents shoot into cars, engage in chemical warfare with bystanders, and even assault parents in front of their children. My grandson, who I am raising with my wife and my wife, are terrified. My grandson talks about it every little while, and he wants to know if his classmates will be safe, if their parents will be deported. But it's also never been just about immigrants. It's about controlling every one of our communities, brown, Asian, black, and everyone who is Chicagoland and Illinois. These are not actions of a democracy. These are actions of a tyrant. I took an oath when I became a citizen 46 years ago, and again when I was sworn in as a member of the United States Congress, and my loyalty is sworn to the U.S. Constitution, and only that. And my oath compels me to be here today with our leaders. Because when a president tries to federalize the National Guard, when he ignores court orders, when his agents break the law and brutalize our community, he is not protecting the country, he's waging war against the country. This lawsuit is not just about legal arguments, it's about accountability, it's about whether or not we'll allow tyranny to take root on our soil. Donald Trump is pushing the boundaries and daring to believe that the courts, the law, the Constitution no longer matter. We cannot stand for that. Don't lose the faith. We must fight as if the courts still matter, because they do. We must stand as if the law has meaning, because it does. And we must resist together, because only together can we defeat the assault on our communities. Chicago will not be intimidated. Illinois will not be silenced. History will remember where we stood in this moment, whether we stood tall or we shrank in fear. Today, we stand tall. Brevemente. Estamos viviendo en uno de los capítulos más peligrosos en la historia de nuestro país. El presidente de los Estados Unidos ha convertido el poder del gobierno en una arma en contra del pueblo. En mi comunidad, el epicentro de estos ataques, los encapuchados han creado un estado de sitio, disparando a carros, lanzando gases contra vecinos y asaltando a padres en frente de sus niños. Esto no se trata de controlar a nuestras comunidades, no son acciones de una democracia. Cuando yo tomé el juramento de ciudadano hace 46 años y después como miembro del Congreso, mi lealtad fue a la Constitución de esta nación. Y por eso estamos aquí unidos todos nosotros. Trump quiere nacionalizar a la Guardia Nacional e ignorar órdenes judiciales y permite que sus agentes violen la ley. Eso no es proteger al país, es hacerle la guerra. Chicago no se dejará intimidar. Illinois no será silenciado. Hoy nos paramos firmes, declaramos que el intento de ser dictador no ganará, que la democracia no morirá bajo nuestra mirada y que el poder del pueblo superará el poder de cualquier presidente. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Happy to take questions from members of the media. Tina. Obviously, this was issued by a mayor who's got the ability to issue executive orders. And she is deeply concerned about the people who live in Broadview and how they've been ill-affected by the challenges in her community as a result of the way ICE is behaving. So I know that it was aimed at that. I can't speak to whether it would affect the lawsuit or I know this is about, though, keeping the people of Broadview from being targeted or being unsafe in their communities. I mean, these are folks who are just trying to get to the grocery store, take their kids to school. They live in a community that never had this kind of unrest until Donald Trump decided to do this. Yes.
Okay, we have been listening in there to a press conference with a list of officials here in our state addressing President Trump's plans to deploy National Guard troops here to the state of Illinois and more specifically to Chicago. We heard from Governor Pritzker, also Kwame Raoul, the Attorney General, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle, and Congressman Jesus Chuy Garcia. The biggest thing to come out of this, Governor Pritzker says there was no invasion, no insurrection, and against his objections, the president called for these troops. So there has been a lawsuit that was filed this morning challenging the president's order. The United States DOJ will now have 2 days to respond to the request now for a temporary restraining order. And Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle said she's also filing an amicus brief as well. We are going to continue to live stream this press conference as reporters are asking some more questions. You can stay right here and continue to listen in. We'll be back with more Chicago Live tomorrow between the hours of 1 and 3.
Put into place over time, and there are facts that evolve over time, including, as I mentioned earlier, us becoming aware of the notion of deploying the Texas National Guard last night. We didn't know that Saturday. We didn't know that Sunday morning. And so facts evolve, and so we file a lawsuit not in a rush to just say that we're responding, but we work hard to make sure it's right. It's right by the law, it's right by the facts, and we file it when it's ready. I've known of talks about the Illinois National Guard for weeks, but it was not ripe for filing. Your interpretation from perhaps a journalistic point of view is different from that from a legal point of view. I don't want to file a lawsuit that's summarily dismissed because it's not ripe for filing.
Mayor Johnson, is Mayor Johnson allowed to answer a question? Mayor Johnson,
I just want to, can I just repeat, I want to make sure that you understand the ripeness of it is very, very important, that there are certain triggers that allow you to file a lawsuit. I can't, in anticipation of one of you taking some action without any evidence of you doing it, actually file a lawsuit against you, nor could the state of Illinois file a lawsuit against the President of the United States or the federal government or ICE without the actual calling up of those troops. So it's when did I receive notice? And remember that Oregon had to go back into court to extend that TRO to the Texas and California National Guard that were being called up. In Illinois, we wanted to make sure we had that covered on the first time out. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
So obviously ISP has been out there. Do you expect that ISP's presence will continue? Do you expect, if the National Guard does go to Broadview, does begin assisting ICE, that local law enforcement will pull back further? What do you see the role of local law enforcement if the National Guard?
The role of local law enforcement to protect the people who are protesting and their First Amendment rights, the people of Broadview that we've been called up by the Broadview police. So that's their role, is to back up local police and make sure that the people in that area are kept safe. That doesn't change because there are federalized Illinois National Guard. They're under the orders of the President of the United States, and the Illinois State Police is under the control of the state government and of me. Jacob.
I've heard you describe, excuse me for 1 second, sir. I've heard you describe today the presence of the federal law enforcement here as illegal and unconstitutional. You have said it's a pretext for the invocation of the Insurrection Act. You have said you'll use all authorities at your disposal as the governor of the state to push back on this. And I just heard you talk about your control of the state police here. Beyond legal challenges, what does that push back against the potential invocation of the Insurrection Act look like? Would you order the state police to arrest or detain federal officials or stand in the way of federal law?
No, we follow the law in Illinois. We follow the law. Unlike Donald Trump, we follow the law. We have made sure that, again, under state law, that we've provided funding for programs so that people know their rights, so that they can protect themselves. That's first and foremost. We've made sure that we've pleaded with the public to take action by using their phones to videotape anything and everything that they see. We want to make sure that that's recorded. It's why we were able to even show some video here today. And again, beyond going to court, we have encouraged people to shop at small businesses, to help out your neighbors. We provided support for those children who've been traumatized and for their families by those attacks. But it is the courts, in the end, that are going to have to rule on whether or not Donald Trump has the ability to call up National Guard from another state or from our state. The job of our state police, the mission that they've been given, is to keep the people who are in Broadview and who are protesting safe from ICE, who have been firing gas pellets at people when they've been peacefully protesting.
Does it mean to keep them safe? Does it mean to physically stop ICE agents from doing those types of activities?
Again, we follow the law. There are federal agents following what their orders are. We have our state police following my orders and the orders of the director of the state police. Shia. No.
So we have been listening to a news conference with Governor Pritzker, Mayor Johnson, Kwame Raoul, the Illinois Attorney General, city and state leaders talking about the possible deployment of the National Guard here in Chicago. There was also a lot to unpack from that news conference, and we are going to be doing that for you exactly coming up on the news at 4. But right now, we also want to let you know you heard them talk about this court hearing that was taking place this afternoon regarding trying to prevent the National Guard from being deployed to Chicago. And Kwame Raoul talked about that. Joni was at the courthouse, and she is joining us now live, I believe. Joni, what can you tell us about what happened there this afternoon?
Hi there. Well, Attorney Christopher Wells, speaking for the state of Illinois, stressed urgency about the National Guard coming to the state of Illinois. In that court hearing, we learned that National Guard troops from Texas are to board a plane at 4 o'clock coming to Illinois with arrival tonight. When they arrive here, they will be federalized troops who answer to the Department of War. Judge April Perry said that she received the complaint, which you heard Attorney General Kwame Raoul talking about. It's 500 pages, and in order for her to be able to rule on something like that, she'll have to look and read all of that evidence. So she's going to take 2 days to do that. The state wants a TRO and a preliminary injunction to keep the Guard from coming here. So Judge Perry asked the government, who were represented on the telephone, by the way, what will these troops do when they get here? What cities are they being deployed to? And the attorney could not give that information. Also, it appeared the government did not want to hold off on their operations to wait for this judge to rule on it. Judge Perry said she was very troubled by the lack of information coming out of the government. She said if they do deploy to the streets and are active as early as tomorrow or Wednesday before she can make her ruling on Thursday, that would then give the state more evidence in their pursuit of a temporary restraining order. So we know now that the Texas National Guard is on its way here with arrival tonight. Possible deployment on Wednesday. The Illinois National Guard also has been ordered to report tomorrow for training here in Illinois, but no ruling from the federal court until Thursday. I'm Joni Lum. Back to you.
Okay, thanks, Joni. We'll be talking to Joni again at 4 o'clock as well. Okay, Paris, a lot going on today. To kind of summarize for our
a lot of moving parts as the governor is still addressing media questions right now. So there's the lawsuit you just heard from Joni. The temporary restraining order, the judge will decide on that by Thursday. It sounds very likely that she will rule against the president sending the National Guard here. Then you had Superintendent Larry Snelling trying to clear up the events of this weekend where a woman was shot after allegedly trying to ram federal agents with her car, saying, You cannot use a car to ram federal agents. That's considered use of deadly force, and the agents can use deadly force in response. Also trying to clarify the timeline, as there's been a lot of claims on social media that the chief of patrol had given officers the order to stand down when ICE agents had called for some kind of help at 12:28 on Saturday. Snelling saying there might have been miscommunication, but the chief of patrol never sent that order. There were dispatchers, but there's a strict line in terms of what police can do. They can't, they're not going to ever arrest federal law enforcement, he said.
They cannot, right?
And he said also they are also not going to assist federal law enforcement in immigration per the sanctuary law. So trying to clear up, clearly visibly angry. There's been a lot of heat coming from all angles here on the police department over what happened. Some folks saying, you should be arresting agents. Why are you letting them mace and use chemical agents on your people? Then on the other side saying, why would you not respond to the calls for help? So Snelling saying, we are not politicians. Our police officers are not politicians. We're just here to enforce the law and try and keep the city safe. Well,
the latest news conference we just brought, you had a lot in there, including some videos. We're going to be wrapping all of this up to let you know exactly what's happening today and what we can expect over the next few days. For now, that's our special report. Hope to see you back here for Fox 32 News at 4.
A highly produced video of the raid, her version of the story, because that's all this is to them, a promotional video, political theater. The human toll must be immense. What if it was your child, yanked out of his bed in the middle of the night, hands zip-tied behind him, brought down with few, if any, clothes on, standing in the street while all this is happening, watching his parents be arrested in America. In another case, ICE agents fired a pepper ball into CBS Chicago reporter Azo Rezi's car. What was her crime? Driving by the Broadview ICE facility to report on the protests there. It's known in the Constitution as freedom of the press. Doesn't seem to impress Kristi Noem. I've long fought for humane reforms to our immigration system on a bipartisan basis and evidence-based ways to reduce crime in our cities. If the president is serious about fixing our immigration system or lowering crime in our communities, I'm all in. But sending in militarized federal immigration agents and National Guard troops to terrorize Chicago or any American community in any state is not the American way. Excuse me. These actions have accomplished what I believe is the president's true intention here: spreading fear in America, especially among immigrant communities. And he's been very successful. I go to these communities virtually every weekend when I return back to Illinois. I meet with the people who live there. They are scared to death. People who have been here for years, no criminal record, no reason to be removed, working and paying taxes, are afraid to shop and afraid to go to church. Last week on the floor, I warned about this, and I have for some time now. The president's decision to unleash military personnel against the city of Chicago and American communities is another pillar in his master plan to weaponize the federal government against those he views as the enemy within. Where did that phrase come from? From the mouth of the President of the United States speaking to the military leaders of the United States. He told them to be fearful of the enemy within and to use American cities as their training ground. Think of that. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller ranted to law enforcement agents on the eve of their Memphis deployment that they were, quote, being unleashed. Stephen Miller's word, unleashed. Does that sound like law and order? Does that sound like the rule of law? Unleashed.